Welcome to Superintendents Roundtable. I'm Deborah Vinsel, the CEO here at Thurston Community Media. Periodically, we invite the superintendents from our area local schools to come in and talk about issues related to education in our community. Today, we're pleased to have with us the superintendents from the 4 largest school districts. I'd like to introduce Deborah Clemens from the North Thurston Public Schools, Brian Wharton from the Yelm Community Schools, John Bash from the Tumwater Schools, and the newest member of the roundtable is Patrick Murphy, the new superintendent at the Olympia School District. So we're going to take a few minutes here at the beginning of the show and give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves to our viewers. You've been in the Sound region for a while, and I know that you came to us from Edmonds. So can you share a little bit about who Patrick Murphy is?
Sure. Thanks, Deborah. Yeah, I was very, very excited to be in the Thurston County and in the Olympia community. You mentioned that I was in the Edmonds School District before coming here. I was the assistant superintendent there for 5 years and basically worked with secondary education, high schools and middle schools, but all sorts of other responsibilities with that. Prior to that, I was in the Issaquah School District as an executive director and also as a principal, an assistant principal for about a decade. At Issaquah High School and at a middle school there called Maywood, which is a great experience. Before going to Issaquah, I was in the Bremerton School District for about 4 years as an assistant principal at a junior high, and I was a teacher in the South Kitsap School District in Port Orchard. So that's a little bit of my professional background. In terms of education, I got my bachelor's degree in history from the University of Washington. And that's what I taught. I was a social studies teacher. I got my master's degree at Whitworth University in Spokane, and I got my doctorate from Washington State University. So like I've told people before, I've got Cougars and Huskies both in my background, but Apple Cup week I wear purple. Okay.
So now we know he has staked the claim there. Now we know.
Yeah.
So. Well, welcome to the Roundtable. We're so glad to have you here. I was reading your bio and I noticed that you were actually born in Puerto Rico. I was just wondering, do you still have family on the island or friends there?
No.
Because it's an interesting week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, with the hurricane and things going through. No, I'm actually what I think the term is a Navy brat. So my father was in the Navy, and he was stationed at Roosevelt Roads Naval Base in Puerto Rico, and I just happened to be born.
Well, he was there.
Yeah, so we were there probably for less than a year when we moved, and lived all over, lived in other places that were affected by the hurricane, lived in Florida, lived in Bermuda for 5 years. Then we went out to California, and we eventually came to Washington because he came up to Bangor, the submarine base, when it opened in the early 80s. So that's how I got here.
Yeah, well, I saw that and I thought, oh, I wonder if he's, connected with people still there. As, we watched that situation unfold and evolve there. So anyway, well, welcome to the Roundtable. We're so glad to have you here, and I know that folks in the school district are glad to have you at the district. So we'll hear more from you in the future, I'm sure.
Yes.
So let's kind of get into our conversation. It's our first roundtable for the 2017-18 school year. And I'm going to let John start with what's new in the Tumwater schools in your districts, and how has the beginning of the school year gone?
Well, it was a great start, and in a lot of ways in Tumwater a new start, because I think in our last episode we talked about a lot of construction projects. So that all culminated at the end of the summer with all of our 6th graders now migrating from elementary schools into the 2 middle schools. And so we're up to 700 students at one of our middle schools and nearly 800 at the other. And they love it. And we staffed up for that, so we added counselors at each middle school and some additional campus security staff to help with supervision and support. And came off without a hitch. There's still a little dust around and a few moldings to pin up, and not all the grass is growing quite yet, but
well, I don't think anybody's grass is growing after this summer, so.
But that's great. And we had more students show up than we projected. We're about 88 students up over what was projected, and so we ended up having to hire 3 additional teachers just at the end of August, and we're still searching for one, and that's in kindergarten. But most of our growth continues to show up at the elementary level, and so it's also sustained growth for us. And while we appreciate the support of our voters with the bond issue, what we're finding is these new buildings are filling up very quickly. And so that'll be a challenge we tackle this year as part of our work. Other than that, I really want to credit our staff and our construction folks in particular for a lot of extra work this year that goes with that kind of startup to not only get your classroom ready, but just plain cleaning, moving boxes, unpacking boxes, all of those things. So teachers, paras, office staff, principals, just about every employee was impacted that way, and they were still smiling on the first day of school.
And how many new buildings did you open this school year?
We opened a brand new Little Rock and then major modernizations at both middle schools, and then we did some stadium work as well, new turf fields at the stadium and at Black Hills High School. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Brian? What's going on in Yelm?
Big things, great things. Outstanding opening to the school year. Like Tumwater, we're up slightly. We're still growing, and we've been on that track for several years. Our biggest change is in configuration. We moved our 6th grade students up to the middle school, and then we moved our 9th graders up to the high school. So Yelm High School is now 1,630 kids. What was unique about that change is that 2 grade levels had to transition up to high school, 2 grades had to transition up to middle school. We probably moved 25 staff members around. We did it through modular and portable buildings at the high school. We added 12 classrooms there. And throughout, our maintenance staff did a fabulous job rebuilding offices, creating new office space, getting all the different areas ready. We did hire extra security as well to help students get from here to there. We had to add 7 buses to the high school runs, and that's created some traffic issues for us that we'll work to solve. But in all, really positive start to the school year.
Great. Deb, how's it going in North Thurston?
Great. I think the beginning of the school year, all of us as superintendents, is such an exciting time. And this year we had an all-staff kickoff. We're a large school district, and so it had been a few years since we brought our entire staff together. And part of the reason we did that is because we have a new strategic plan that we're implementing this year, and we wanted to share that with our staff. Our board approved that in July, and so now the real work begins around that strategic plan. Like everyone else, we have very strong enrollment, in particular at the elementary and middle level, continued growth in those grade levels, and that will continue and put more pressure on our high schools in the years to come. As you know, this was the 2nd year for us going into a significant boundary change, and the good news is that the changes that we made are making better use of all of our facilities. Our high schools are continuing to trend toward being more similar in size, and we expect that to continue over the next 2 years. The other thing that was a 2nd-year experience for us was full-time kindergarten in all of our elementary schools, and in North Thurston as well as in other school districts. We complete a process where children come with their parents during the first couple of days of the school year, become acquainted with their teacher. It's a family connection experience, and then for us, kindergartners' first day of school was actually this past Monday, and that just makes for such a nice, smooth transition for kindergartners.
Great. Sounds like you've all off to a good start. You're the new guy at the table, so how's it going in Olympia?
Well, it was particularly exciting for me, being a new superintendent and my first time in that role opening a school year. And we too had a kickoff event with our staff where we welcomed everyone back, and it was an opportunity for me to share what I've learned so far about the Olympia School District, being on the job for about 2 months. Really celebrating a lot of the accomplishments that Superintendent Civitanich that preceded me and the work that they had all done, and some real strong achievement results across the Olympia School District. And then simultaneously at the same time, we said, well, who's not achieving at the levels we might like? And we started digging into some data and talked about it as a staff, and we see some historical trends with different demographics of students that aren't performing where we want them to be. And we talked about how that's the work that we want to do. I thought it was a good meeting, and anecdotally hearing back, I think staff were appreciative of the focus as we launched into the school year. As a new superintendent, I had a former superintendent that I worked with that said, you know what might be a good idea for you, Patrick, is on your first day, why don't you ride the bus? So I did.
Great idea.
Yeah, so I jumped on the route that goes right by this building that feeds
Right.
Hanson and LP
Marshall
Brown and
yeah.
Marshall. And so I was getting off the bus on the first morning, and there were parents that were looking at me a little bit confused. Who is this strange man getting off the bus? And I said, well, I'm the new superintendent. I just want to know the experience your kids were having. And a couple of parents were like, be extra good on the bus this morning. So, but it was an awesome experience. The driver that I was with was just incredibly warm with the kids, and every classroom that I went into that week, and I managed to make it out to all schools, was just warm and inviting and welcoming. And
Right.
I think the staff were just as eager to see the kids and hear about their summer experiences as the kids seeing their peers. So it was a great start to school. As far as enrollment in Olympia, our business office did a real sound job of projections because we're right about on it. We're just a little tiny bit above projection, maybe a handful of students, but that's good. Then being on the opposite end would be
Right.
bad. So
Right.
real good start to the school year.
That's great to hear. So what are some of the new initiatives or plans for the upcoming year? I mean, we're just, 2 weeks into the year, but there's a lot out ahead of us, and I know you all have plans for things that you want to implement or new initiatives or construction projects. I'm going to start with you, Brian. What's on the table for the 2017-18 school year?
I think everything that we're doing wraps into one of our 5 board goals, which is a K-12 approach to college and career ready diploma, kids earning that diploma. And so we are launching a college and the high school program, contract with Central Washington University. We have about a dozen courses that will be aligned for college credit. We're also launching a computer science for all initiative, which will bring coding skills all the way down into kindergarten kids this year. Some very rudimentary introductions, but every student will get a coding experience or a computer science experience. We've also recognized some needs within our community, and we made some significant shifts in special education programs for some of our students who have really exceptional needs, and utilizing our facilities a little bit different. We think we're better serving our special education population. And then lastly, we're preparing for a bond measure to rebuild 3 schools, and that will go before the voters in February. And we're real excited to hopefully rebuild 2 elementaries and a middle school.
Wow, that'll be big projects. A lot on your plate for the year. Deborah, what's coming up in North Thurston?
Well, several things. One that I'd like to share about is a new project that we have going on. It's a community-wide project. We're partnering with the City of Lacey and with the Lacey South Sound Chamber on a compassionate community project to raise money to fund the Lacey Food Bank. So the Thurston County Food Bank purchased a property that needs to be developed to provide food for people that live close by and where transportation may have been a barrier for families that need access. And one of the things that North Thurston has undertaken as a system is a compassionate effort to help our students understand how important it is to participate in community service and to give back to your community. So each of our schools will be doing a penny drive this year to be the change to impact raising funds for this compassionate community project that is the Lacey Food Bank. One other item I just want to talk about is North Thurston High School. Again, staff worked very hard to prepare the school. It's still under construction. It's in phase 2 for the start of school, but that construction will continue throughout the year. We have the contractors are coming in and working from the middle of the day until late into the evening, so students will continue to see progress made at that school site.
Great. How about you?
Well, we have some previously passed bond dollars at work in Olympia. We've got some construction projects that are going. 5 of our 11 elementary schools are having mini buildings added to them, and the first 2 should be done this fall. And that was, a lot of that was in reaction to the lower class size mandate. We needed more classroom space to do that. We added a new all-weather turf field at Capitol High School that we're going to be able to use that as a classroom year-round and be able to use that for the community, and we're real excited about that. But in terms of my particular initiatives or things like that need to be implemented this year, it's very similar to what these 3 have done in the past. As a new superintendent, I've been given the charge by our school board to really reach out to our community as an entry plan and really find out from them what their core values and beliefs are, and what are those student outcomes we really want for our students. We have a 5-year strategic plan that's expiring this year, which I think is kind of serendipitous to my arrival. And so doing that outreach and focus groups and working with the community, we'll be putting together our own strategic plan. And there were 4 main things that the board said to me when they said, we want you to do this work. One was, we want you to key on early learning, because they just did an early learning report last spring that they want to be incorporated into that plan. They wanted us to focus on students' emotional, mental, and social health. And that was really pushed by the student representative on our board, who was talking about her friends needing that support. They wanted a relentless pursuit of closing achievement and opportunity gaps, and they wanted everything wrapped in equity. And I mentioned before that Olympia's got a lot of good data to be proud of, but we also want to look at where are those places we can improve, and where are those students that maybe aren't reaching where we want to. 90% graduation rate in Olympia is among the highest in the state, but if your kid is in the 10%, that data point doesn't mean a whole lot to you. So that's the work we're going to be working on this year.
Okay. And John, what are the plans in Tumwater?
Well, like some of the other districts, the project cycle continues. So East Olympia Elementary is at the front end of a modernization project there, not as broad in scope as Little Rock, but building systems and some security upgrades that will enclose some outdoor hallways and things like that, so that kids also don't freeze from one place to another during the winter time. And so that's underway at the same time. Tumwater Hill Elementary, which is the same building prototype as East Ole, they're in the design phase of a very similar project. Beyond our facilities, I can tell you we're also focused on implementing a brand new elementary mathematics program, along with an assessment system that aligns to not only our state standards, but to the curriculum that and materials that we've purchased. So we kicked off in August with some training for staff, and that'll continue throughout the year. Likewise, in social studies and in English at the secondary level, we have new materials and a similar adoption set of activities going with that. We were pleased this summer to launch, as part of our community schools effort, a partnership with the Housing Authority, where 5 families now are enjoying a roof over their heads who were formerly homeless, right across the street from Peter G. Elementary. And while we're excited about that, we view that as only the beginning, because what we've learned through that partnership is that there are Housing Authority units in each of our communities. And so this was kind of the first try at, hey, what if we prioritize some of these units for families that have school-age children, and we target those facilities that are close to schools so transportation isn't a barrier. And so we're excited to explore what we can do in phase 2 now with that. And I mentioned earlier that we have made some investments in our athletic facilities, and this evening we'll be dedicating Sid Otten Field to our coach with a legacy that doesn't need explanation, but he'll be there 6:45 tonight to join us for the formal naming of the field, and his name is already in the new turf, so we're excited about that tonight.
Nice. How wonderful that is. That's great. So, did I get everybody on that? I kind of lose my place sometimes. So, when we met the last time, the legislature was still churning through its work. And as we all know, it was really pretty much at the last minute on June 30th that they finally signed or approved a budget, and the governor finally signed it. My husband works for the state, so, you know, we were like just watching the clock. But there's no capital budget yet, and that's still, you know, yet to be determined. So knowing that we have this conversation about budget at practically every meeting that we get together, I know that you all had your budgets already in place for this upcoming school year without having the state having finished their work. What's been the impact of the budget that was passed? And in addition to that, what is the impact on you all for the budget, or for the state not having its capital budget in line yet? So I'm sure that that has an impact for all of you. And I'm going to start with you.
Well, I'll start with the capital budget. And for us in Olympia, the there is no immediate impact of the capital budget not being passed by the state because, forget the words that you used, John, but we kind of, on the top end, we have funding already. On the front end, we have funding to do our projects. So it's not stopping us from doing what we're doing right now. But if something doesn't get done in the future, it could certainly negatively impact us. But in terms of the operating budget and the result of the most recent legislative session, I mean, we're still doing analysis, but the initial analysis is it's not good, Deborah. It is not good. We are looking at significant shortfalls in funding after this year going into next year in the range of anywhere from around $9 million short. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, but I would say the bottom line is that the levy was dramatically reduced at the local level, and it was supposed to be at least equally or even more than equally replaced with state funding, and that has not been the case for us in Olympia. It's dramatically short, and the costs of some of the new mandates and initiatives, again, make that it doesn't add up. And so we're pretty concerned.
Okay. John,
Patrick's done a nice job of
what he said.
framing the big picture, but I would just add that all of us were recently part of some training, not only in August, but now into September from our local educational service district, because we're all trying to make sense of a brand new way to fund schools. And I guess I'll begin by saying in 2017-18, we're still not fully funded by the state. So the funding model that was the basis for the McCleary decision is still in place for one more year. That said, we did all see some additional money for kindergarten through third grade class size. So there were some enhancements this year that were helpful, but we're still relying heavily on local levies in all 4 of our school districts. And what Patrick's alluding to is a significant reduction in what we're going to be able to collect in our levies that now will be replaced with a statewide property tax. And the irony is, I know in Tumwater, taxpayers are going to pay a little bit more for school taxes, but Tumwater's going to see less money coming to them. That will be counterintuitive to folks who just read headlines in the newspaper that education got all this new money. And so I'm going to share a statistic with you that was recently given to us, and that if you consider that a swap, so local levy now swapped for what they're going to call enrichment levies through a statewide property tax, right? And so our ESD folks who crunch numbers have said that while there'll be a net gain of about $470 million after you account for lost local levy money, and if you stop there, you say, well, isn't that good news? If you take that $470 million, what it amounts to is 157 of the 295 districts in Washington will enjoy about $600 million, while 137 districts in Washington will lose a total of $129 million.
Wow.
So why is that? Well, part of the legislature's function with the McCleary decision was equity. And so the basis of the case in part was a student in a district that can't pass a levy is not getting the same quality of education as a student in a district that can. And the disparity between districts and what they could raise locally is and has been great and growing. So when you equalize that, this is the result. Unfortunately, in districts like ours, that generally means, well, then we're literally sharing now with more districts in the state where that money used to be localized.
So it wasn't equalized by doing this. It was equalized by doing this.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay. How's it going to impact you folks?
Well, I think that from the capital side, since we are going to run a bond measure in February, the question about the capital budget status is starting to creep into the conversation, which concerns us. Our community is saying, will the money be there? Well, you know, if we vote for it, will you be able to actually build the schools? And you know, that's part of the uncertainty that just makes communities not sure if they want to vote for measures or not, and that's a struggle. In Yelm, the water rights conversation is a very difficult one. so we understand that. But we hope that we don't get diverted from our mission of dealing with our enrollment growth versus our smaller facilities. Doesn't get derailed by an argument over the capital budget.
Can I jump in just for a second here, because I think many of our viewers may not understand how the state capital budget affects your capital, especially if you put a bond out to build buildings and the bond is approved by your local voters and your supporters, then why does the state capital budget impact that?
If in your bond measure that you've gone into the program called SCAP, it's a school construction measure, that you can get some matching dollars for what you approve locally added to that. And if you are dependent on those state dollars to front fund your projects, then like many of the districts in the state right now, there's projects that are delayed because that money has not flowed into those districts.
So a $100 million project on your books is 50, I mean, for the sake of the conversation, 50 million from the district or from your bond, and then 50 million from the state, and that money comes to front the project while the bond money is coming in behind it.
It would be more like 70-30.
70-30.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a true match.
Okay. So.
Yeah, in some districts, it's as much as 40 or 50% of the cost of a project, though.
Okay.
And I would tell you that the smallest districts in the state that were relying on that money are hit the hardest because they don't have a larger bond package, for example, to borrow from to keep their projects going. And so what we're hearing from our friends in smaller places is they not only had to pull the plug on their projects, they're seeing the bid market now do this. And so they're really worried that if it's solved, when
they still won't be able to do the project because they can't afford it.
Exactly.
Right.
One point of clarification, there's not really disagreement about the importance of the funding and then the need for the funding. It comes in two different categories. One is to replace aging facilities and spaces, to renovate those spaces, and the other is based on enrollment growth, unhoused students. So at the state level, there was agreement on the amount of the budget, it just didn't pass through. For North Thurston, right now, because we front funded using local bond dollars the capital construction projects, we're okay right now, but as quickly as February, it'll be an issue for us because we have new projects that we're dependent on the state match in order to continue.
Okay. So call your legislators, talk to them. It's important. I think, we're just going to have to see how this all unfolds and hope that when the legislature comes back in January, they get work done. It's always, we've had how many special sessions in the last, many years. So we'll just wait to see how that rolls out and hope that the legislature does what it does in order that you can do what you need to do. So let's just kind of wrap up our conversation for today, since this is the first roundtable of the school year. It tends to be a little bit shorter because we know things roll out and we have lots more to talk about in a couple of months. But I always like to go around the table and ask, in these first couple weeks of school, you mentioned your story about riding on the bus. What a great experience what that was. Has there been, one of those, this is why I do what I do moments for all of you? And I'll start with John and we'll come back around and you can think of another one.
Well, I have one that stuck with me later in the summer, not just the start of the school year. I overheard somebody come into our district office and talk with Tammy Collins, who not only serves as my executive assistant, but she's our homeless liaison, and she's been doing that work for years. This is a former mom in Tumwater who eventually had to move north with her two sons and receive support because her situation qualified her as homeless from Tammy and our program. And she went out of her way, because she was down here for other business, to stop in and let us know. One of my sons graduated from high school, was enrolled in community college. The other had received a scholarship and was going on to pursue his dreams. And she broke down into tears and said, that would not have happened without the help you gave me. And so those are the things that, really do matter beyond reading, writing, and math. And it's why we're so deeply committed, I think, as an entire county, to meet the whole child needs, not just the academic needs for our kids.
Right. That's great. How about you, Brian?
Had a very emotional moment at our new teacher orientation this year. We've really been focusing on where our graduates have gone and which ones have entered teacher training programs. And so at our new teacher orientation, we got to welcome 8 of our graduates into our teaching ranks. And was even more fun is that 2 of them were students that I had when I was the principal at the high school. So not only did I get to hand them a diploma, I also got to offer them their first contract. So that was really special. And then with all the changes we've made in our district, traffic is not real strong. It's not real fun in Yelm sometimes. And we've had a group of volunteers who've stepped up. And at our high school and our middle school now, we're developing teams of volunteers, mostly retired folks who are serving as crossing guards for us. And they're being trained by the city police. It's been a nice collaboration. But it's just nice to see people see a need, step up, and say, we'll help you solve that problem. It's been a good start that way.
Right. Deb, how about you?
I was thinking about how it's so much more than academics, what our kids learn as being a member of a school community. And I happen to have 2 daughters that attend North Thurston Public Schools, and both of them are involved in leadership activities tied to their school community. Again, learning to give back to their community. And my 7th grader just started participating in volleyball after school. Never played volleyball before. And you think about those opportunities that are tied to our schools that really are locally funded for students to have those experiences. But a lot of learning happens outside of the classroom.
It does. It does. And how about you?
Well, you gave me time, Deborah, and I was
Came up with
thinking
20.
of all sorts of different things. But I guess I'll just share one. And what it comes down to is I just think that public schools are so important. And I just think they are the key to the success of this country. And I think that the key for us in public schools is to give our students meaningful, engaging learning experiences every day, that they want to be there. And so when I was walking around the schools the first week and I was seeing all these smiling faces, it was just so, it just felt so good to see everybody just so excited and wanting to be there. And this story was walking through the hallways of Capitol High School. And I was walking with the principal down the hallway, and we walked by a door, and I heard the distinct sound of what sounded like electric guitar. And I said, and this is the second day of school, and I said, what is that? And he said, oh, that's our School of Rock class. And I said, you mean like the movie? And I don't know if you've seen the movie. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, very, very much like the movie. And so I said, well, can we go in there? And so we walked in, and there were students all around the room doing different things that you would think are needed to like produce a rock album. There were people in front playing guitars. There were drum kits around the room that were electronic. There were people with headphones on the back at mixing boards. There was recording people in the back on the second day of school, all thoroughly engaged in this. And then the teacher came over and told me and said, yeah, we just started this up. We're doing a lot of different scientific theory in here around sound frequency and this, and that. And I'm thinking, are you going to get them a science credit for it? We're working on it. And again, and I'm just thinking, there's a new 3-credit requirement for this year's freshman class that they have to have 3 credits of science. And I'm thinking that engaged, personal, hands-on type of activity, and here it was in this room on the second day, and those kids, I'm sure, couldn't wait to get back the next day to that class. So that just was one example of the things that I saw that were just engaging kids in that first week.
Great. Well, it sounds like the school year's off to a really good start, and I know we're going to have lots to talk about later in the year when we get back again. I know we'll see all of you a couple more times before the end of the school year. Thanks for taking time from your very busy schedules to come join us here at the Roundtable for the first one of the 2017-18 school year. And thank you for all the really good work you do in your districts.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you're the parent of a preschool child, please read with your child 20 minutes a day. It's one of the best things you can do to get them ready for their education. And while you're at it, try some counting games to get them interested in math and numbers. If you're the parent of a school-age child, get involved with your child's education. Talk to their teacher or their principal about ways you might volunteer in the school or assist in your child's growth and development. Thanks for joining us. For all of us here at the Superintendents Roundtable, I'm Deborah Vinsel. We'll see you again soon.